Hey guys, Mike the Vike here, back for yet another video. This time around we are going to be doing my review of the MSI GS60. This thing is a very cool gaming laptop, and I did have to spend a little bit more time in the testing period, I guess you could say, figuring out my thoughts on it, because it was a very different laptop for me. In price, in form factor, in a lot of ways. So yeah, let's get right into it. This is my review. And we're going to talk about the extremities, I guess. At first, right up, I guess we'll talk about the display. If you're worried about displays, MSI gets their displays pretty darn well, except for the GE40. This thing is no exception. Really good viewing angles. I guess the camera isn't a great way to show this, but you know, you can kind of tell, at least even with this, that viewing angles are not a problem. It also, in terms of quality, I think the colors are really good, and in general I have no complaints of the display. It's quite fine in my opinion. If we're going to talk about the physical part of that display, MSI for some reason always likes making their laptops go super far back. So yeah, this thing goes back like crazy. Like, you can use this thing standing up basically, which is pretty neat. And it goes further back than any other laptops that I know, like MSI laptops in general. But other than that, we've got the keyboard, and I think the keyboard's great. Some people complain about it based on the fact that they pushed it down because they had to make space for the fan exhaust here. But I don't mind really. After maybe a half hour, an hour of typing, you get used to it. In terms of the actual keyboard itself, like the placement of the keys, I think it's great, the spacing and all that. No complaints there. But yeah, I guess technically, the reason people don't like it is because your hand is resting right here. I personally have no problems with this. I think it's totally usable. It depends how you use your keyboards, but I've got pretty big hands and I don't have a problem with it at all. Same with the trackpad. People were complaining that it was lousy. I think it's, well, it's just another trackpad to me, right? I'm not going to be gaming with this. I'm going to be using maybe the Mamba. But yeah, for general use, trackpad, no problem, right? You can open up whatever you want to open up, and you can close and stuff. It works fine. If I have to complain about one thing, it's that it's using the integrated buttons, not the separated, meaning like they would be split and cut, like separated between the actual movement part. I don't know, this is something you would find on like an Ultrabook or something, which is funny, but I understand, but I prefer the split keys. That's just my preference. Now another thing to test is the speakers, and again, this is one of those things that people were complaining about, but I think it's a very decent set of speakers. There's a quick little speaker test, and I, again, think they're totally fine. They got a little bit of detail. Obviously, when you do raise the volume up, this is at 100% in VLC, and in the actual speakers, this is at 60%. But when you do raise it up to 100, it does lack a bit of detail. But in terms of using it in like a loud environment for yourself or to a bunch of people, no problem showing off a project of yours or whatever it may be. I think the speakers are totally fine for a laptop. Of course, if we want to compare to like some $1,000 7.1 surround sound configuration, it's not going to compare, but it's a laptop. Another thing obviously to talk about would be the ports and stuff. I think we have a very fair selection of ports. We've got Ethernet, mini DisplayPort, HDMI, SD card, USB 3, and that's a powered one. We've got our power jack, Kensington lock, 2 USB 3s, microphone, headphone, and that's all she wrote. You might think that's fairly limited, but you have to look at the thinness of this thing, right? Thing's super thin. And then you also have to compare it to something like the Razer Blade 14. That thing has, well, less ports than this does, basically. And so, yeah, no complaints really for ports. I guess if we want to say one thing, it doesn't have a VGA, which is like a super common thing if you're in an office or whatever it may be. But I'm not complaining, honestly, it's totally reasonable. Another thing that I guess is annoying is the placement of the power jack, but that's a nitpick nothingness, like forget that. It's just because they have like fan exhausts everywhere to keep this thing cool. And that's actually our next point of interest would be the internals. Specs wise, this thing has basically cream of the crop everything. Full specs are in the description, but it's got an i7, 860M, 16 gigs of RAM, SSD and hard drive, and in general it's a very powerful system for the size, and in general it's just a powerful system. If I had one complaint about the internals, it's that it's using the Kepler 860M, not the Maxwell. That really killed it for me a bit at first, and I understand why they had to do it because they offer the 870M, which is also Kepler, to compete with other laptops, but I would have preferred if they just went with like one option and it's just the 860M Maxwell. That's just me though. Yeah, but still, power-wise, it's still going to be able to play whatever you want. Honestly, 1080p, you'll be able to play whatever game you want. Not max, but you'll be able to play the games at reasonable frame rates. And I'm talking like 60 FPS if you don't mind lowering the settings, right? But at 1080p, so it's okay. Another big topic obviously is fan noise and temperatures, and I am a huge person against fan noise and temperatures, but this thing is very reasonable for what it is. I'm going to start at Prime 95 and we'll get the fans revving you for a bit so you can hear what they sound like, as well as the temperatures. So that's basically as loud as it gets, and you might be like, that's fairly loud, but compared to other laptops, I've used a stupid amount of laptops, this thing's very reasonable. And then of course one big thing that kind of makes it reasonable for these to be as loud as they are is the fact that, I don't know if you can read that, but the temperatures maximum are 84, well it says 84 here, but it's basically 85 after running it for a bit longer. And you may think that's fairly hot, but this is a laptop and it's also a super thin laptop, and it's also Kepler and it's also Haswell, so it's got a couple things against it that make it run a little bit hotter naturally, I guess. With that said, keep in mind we're in a really hot room right now. It's probably about 5 degrees hotter than it should be in here. So in a standard temperature room where there's actually air conditioning and a fan going, it'll be 5 degrees colder than that. As also, if you want to reduce temperatures, just raise the back of the laptop a bit, put your wallet behind there or whatever you want, you can reduce the temperatures by 5 again. And yeah, the reason no fan is because, well, I gotta be quiet for the review, but yeah, so fan noise, temperatures, no complaints there, honestly, for the form factor, right? And same goes for power. I have no complaints. Again, it's able to do whatever I want it to do, really. Other than that, there isn't too much to talk about. I guess you could talk about design. I think it's, oh god, but I think it's a very well designed laptop. It looks really cool. You got nice styling going on here, same with the keyboard, you know, and I think it's cool in that regard. If there's one thing I'd like to complain about, it's the bezel, and compared to other laptops, it just seems big to me. Here, let me just give this thing some mercy. Okay, so I turned off the Prime 95, but yeah, I don't know. Basically, the bezel makes the whole thing huge, and the bezel is a nice way to make everything bigger, right? So I guess in general, I would prefer if they would have made the footprint of the laptop smaller, not just really thin. I prefer, the Razer Blade 14 form factor in terms of footprint is, perfect, right? But that's also 14-inch. But that's just my dream, right, is to have a very, almost no bezel. That'd be awesome, but whatever, right? It's a very small compromise for what you're getting in terms of power, thinness, lightness, everything. And other than that, guys, I really don't have too much to say. Oh, I guess one last thing would be the power brick. It's actually just average power brick. It's for a gaming laptop. If we want to compare, this is really Canadian, but here's a gift card or whatever for Tim Hortons, because classic. But that's just standard credit card size, and it's like, you know, you can put it from there, right? It's just, it is a regular powered briquette. I think it's just like any other MSI, like GE60 and stuff like that. So they didn't do any kind of R&D to make that thing thinner, but still, I'm not complaining too much. I wish it was a little bit smaller though, obviously. One final thing I would like to mention is, some people will comment, is it worth the money? And it again has to depend on what you're looking for in a laptop, right? And some people will immediately type, wow, for that money I could get a desktop with like a 780 or 780 Ti in it, but your 780 Ti will not be able to run with you like wherever you are. You're paying for the portability and mobility of this thing. So I guess people may not see the value in that, but I definitely do. And if you're on the go, you'll definitely notice the value in that. So yeah, that's just my little thought on the portability, really. You're paying for the portability. But other than that, guys, I think it's an excellent laptop. It's super thin, super light. If this is what you're looking for, like a really thin, powerful laptop, this is an option to consider. There's a bunch out there, and there's like a Lenovo Y50 coming out. I'm not sure if that's better or not, but I'm sticking with this thing because I think it's awesome. And other than that bezel, and the fact that it's not Maxwell, other than that, like, I really have no problems with this thing. So that's basically it, guys. Just another laptop review of mine. I hope that you enjoyed, and let me know if you have any other thoughts and opinions. Sorry about the camera angles. This isn't the type of video that I exactly have equipment for. If I got more into this, then yeah, I would get sliders and dollies and all that jazz, but it's just something that I just talked to you guys about. But yeah, again, that's really it, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.